Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my Alex King Chess YouTube channel. I am FIDE Master Alex King, and this is my friend and co-host Mark Louderback. Say hi to the audience, Mark.
How are you all doing today?
Excellent. So we are joining you here um, on
Finally,
this Saturday. Yes, it's been a while since our last video, but here we are with some fresh and spicy content for you. We're going to take a look at a game between the two players who will be contesting our next World Championship match. And so those are Jan Nepomniachtchi and Liren Ding. And these are the players that finished in first and second place in the recently concluded FIDE Candidates tournament. And Mark, why is it that these two are the players who will be playing the next World Championship match?
because of the current world champion, and I'm a little unsure about whether he is the current world champion, Magnus Carlsen, decided that he did not want to compete. And so he is abdicating, he is giving up his throne, and he is allowing these two players to compete for the championship. Alex, what's your hot take on this?
My hot take is that I think it's great. I think it is great that this is what Magnus is doing. And here's why. First of all, let the man live. The man can live his life, like he can have fun in whatever way he wants. If he doesn't want to fight for the world championship title anymore because it's like too much of a schlep and he's got like poker to play and gum to chew or like whatever it is that he wants to spend his life doing, I say great. Furthermore, uh I think that, he clearly has some objections with the format of the World Championship in general, the match format and such. And so I think it's good that he is, forcing a shakeup in terms of the tradition. I think that a lot of traditions deserve a good shakeup, and chess is no exception. And finally, I think that there is a bit too much emphasis in the chess world on the world championship match being the like mathematically proven method of determining the strongest player in the world. I don't think that that is the case for other sports. People don't, you know, pretend that the team that wins the NFL championship every year is automatically the best team in the league. It's just the team that won that particular format. And I think we need a dose of that in the chess world too. So those are my hot takes. I say it's great. What do you think, Mark?
I understand what you are saying, but the issue is that from this point now on, there is going to be an asterisk on whoever wins this world championship. Everyone is going to look at that and they're going to say, "Oh yes, he won that year, but Magnus didn't play. So is he really the
But do we say
championship?"
that about like Karpov when he became the world champion by default in 1975 when Fischer abdicated? I mean, we don't.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely, absolutely. Come on, people. I
well,
mean, well, if YouTube was around back in those days, you certainly would have been saying it. I
well,
mean, my
I don't
gosh, wasn't a whole
see.
lot of social media at that point, Alex.
Okay,
Now
but
we're able to express these opinions.
I think if you're really looking for an asterisk, you can find one for almost any of the world champions. I mean, what about the fact that Capablanca didn't give Aliekin a rematch? I mean, what about the fact that Lasker was ducking Meraxi? I mean, it's
You
like
know,
you could come
that's
up with some sort of, disparaging circumstance for any of the past world champions if you looked hard enough. And so that's why I feel like
But
we
this
just
isn't
shouldn't.
looking hard enough, Alex. This is not looking hard enough. This is just surface
Maybe.
looking at it. The world champion, the best player, okay? Currently in our generation, there's not a whole lot of question about who is number one. I can appreciate you talking about, oh, well, whoever wins the Super Bowl, maybe they're not the best team of that year. Yeah, but when it comes to boxing and individual titles and all that, when you win and when you have won in a dominant fashion for a number of times, you're the number one player. And when you step down, or if you, as I said, if you're sort of like, hey, I'm not gonna compete anymore, then the people coming up after that, it's unfortunate for them. It's unfortunate that Nepo isn't going to get a chance to redeem himself and play and perhaps beat the world champion, so that he could say, I am, I earned this. Instead, he's going to be playing, as I said, I mean, the someone who came up through the candidates who almost didn't come in second. I mean,
Well, I can understand all of these things too from your perspective. I actually am really looking forward to the Nepo versus Ding World Championship match, even though some may put an asterisk next to it, and it won't. People won't. There won't be any mistaking that it will not be producing the best player in the world. It's not. It's just it's sort of a consolation match in a way, but I think it'll still be a great
yeah,
match. It'll still be very
sure,
interesting.
sure,
And as we're about to see in
absolutely.
this game that we're going to look at right now, both of these guys, Nepo and Ding, are very interesting players. They have devoted global followings, and the match I feel like will be interesting from a chess level and maybe from a geopolitical level as well. So anyway, let's jump in. So this is the
Yes.
game that Nepo and Ding played in round one of the FIDE Candidates tournament, and Nepo won with black in the very first round, which, by the way, makes it even more impressive that Ding, fought back and made it all the way to second place in the final standings, by the end of
Yes,
the tournament.
yes.
So
Ding was having initially having very poor performance and all that, and it's great amount of, because he kind of skated in, at the last minute, and so it's there are some questions about, I mean, he was supposed to be coming
right,
in with
right.
a great rating,
Right.
but
He
at the beginning
replaced
didn't look like it.
Karyakin, right? Because Karyakin
Mm-hmm.
was disqualified from participating, and
Yes.
that's what allowed Ding to play, right? And so yeah, even more of sort of a Cinderella story. But anyway, so let's look at this game now. Neither of us have analyzed this game yet, and so
No.
we'll be sort of taking a fresh look at it. Um, and what I propose that we do, Mark, is that we before we turn on the engine, we sort of go through it. We make a first pass on our own and try to make some
Okay.
just tentative conclusions with our own puny human brains. Then we'll take another deper pass with Stockfish and try to get closer to the heart of the matter. So
Sounds good.
let's play through the moves. I remember seeing this game when it was played during the round, but I haven't like analyzed it or anything afterward. So we've got an English, and Nepo plays this move C6, which is a line that I've played in the past as black. And
But it
Ding
is an
plays.
odd. I mean, it is a sort of a non-standard move that you would say at this level. Isn't that
Well,
correct? I mean, already
it's not
aren't
the
we sort of kind of?
it's not the most common move, that's for sure. But I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
sort of like a reversed C3 Sicilian. It's kind of like this line, but with this extra move thrown in, same position, right? So
Yep.
with reversed colors. So I mean, it's not crazy in that way. Now, in my experience, the main move for white is to play D4 here, and then uh, black can still play E4, which is what Nepo played in this game, but it's just a different sort of structure. In the game, Ding played knight F3, E4, knight D4, D5. So
Mm-hmm.
again, this is like pretty standard like stuff in the C3 Sicilian. And so the fact that we have the same position with reversed colors, it still seems relatively normal to me. So, okay. So Ding takes and Nepo takes back with the queen. Now, this
Mm-hmm.
is the first thing that looks maybe unusual to me. Although again, like even
Absolutely.
in the C3 Sicilian, there are some people who play this there are some people who play this like queen takes d4 thing. So the same thing
Yes.
with reverse colors. I do have some experience against this. And so I guess it still doesn't seem that crazy. Nothing has seemed too crazy what Nepo's doing. And so knight to c2, knight f6, knight c3, okay, gaining some time against the queen, but the queen comes here. And like Nepo has this like strong pawn that's kind of in in white's face, sort of cramping his position a bit. Now
Really, it's funny that you describe it that way, because it just seems to me that once the bishop comes out onto G2, you're going to have this target that you're going to be
it's double-edged.
looking
Yeah,
at.
it could be a target or it could be a strength. Like it's sort of unclear at the moment which one it will be, you know. And so yeah, that's kind of maybe the central fight of the position now is like whether that pawn will be good or bad. And so okay, knight a6. Now this move I suppose is a little bit weird looking. I mean, maybe the knight wants to come here. I mean, I'm like cheating and looking ahead in the game, and it looks like the knight doesn't come there, but like several moves later, it comes like here and then here. So,
Right.
um, I mean, I don't know. It's a little bit unusual. Okay, so castles, bishop e7, knight e3, and then Nepo castles. Now, I was expecting white at some point, maybe even let's say right here, to challenge this pawn with d3 and try
Why?
to trade it off. Well, just because then that maybe like removes the risk that the pawn could be a strength for black. It seems like you're sort of assuming that the pawn is going to be a weakness rather than a strength, but
Yep.
I would almost be worried of the opposite, that like better safe than sorry, maybe white should trade off this pawn early on like this in case it does, become a strength. And so after takes, queen takes, the pawn is gone, and now we have a much more standard pawn structure. We have this like 4-2 versus 3-3 pawn structure. I guess that's another reason
Hmm.
why, you know, I I sort of lean toward that decision by white because it reaches something I'm more familiar with, this standard pawn structure, whereas the pawn structure that we were in before that is a little bit more unusual. So I'm a little bit less sure about how to evaluate it or how to handle it. So okay,
And so looking at that,
yeah,
from this, at this moment, are you sort of like, okay, you would imagine that the first match of a tournament like this would be kind of the feeling out sort of play, and this would be the time when you would draw naturally because you're not going to go too far, you're not going to have your opponent sort of go too far and all that. There's no need, to sort of be aggressive and find yourself in a unfortunate situation. But here, do you feel as though the players are really actually, they're not just kind of playing for a draw. They really are sort of looking to gain an advantage, which is to say that they're looking to gain an imbalance in the
right.
position.
It certainly seems like that they were kind of ready to get their hands dirty right from the get-go here, which I think is good. I mean, I'd love to see more tournaments start with like really fighting games like this, even from the very first round. So, yeah, overall, it was a very fighting tournament. Very interesting stuff. I liked it. So, okay. So then Ding plays a3, which is obviously preparing b4, and then he's going to develop his bishop to b4. And then Nepo plays this interesting move, knight g4. And
Mm-hmm.
so I suppose that so first of all, okay, uh like this is hanging. So okay, he can't take it with his knight because of this, because the rook would be hanging, but he could take it with the bishop, and then uh I suppose I don't really know why uh this is not just hanging. I mean, if we take like this, white could take back like this, so I don't see what's so bad there. If we go here hitting this, white could take. I mean, black may still have some compensation here, but I don't know. This will be something that we'll have to ask the computer about later. I'm not sure exactly
Yeah.
what would be the downside to taking this pawn for white. So, but instead, Ding just plays bishop b2. Nepo
Mm-hmm.
swings his queen over, and then again, instead of taking, which would have been my first instinct, because like black is not threatening anything right now. This pawn is defended by the knight. And so it's kind of like, okay, again, white could snatch this pawn if he wanted to. Um, I don't know. I mean, maybe white would play like this, and then we're threatening this followed by this, or we're also threatening this too. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just too much play for black. So again, we'll see what the computer says. But in any event, Ding played h4. So
Yeah.
h4 is like the other way to defend against black's threat if queen takes h2. But like now that pawn is sort of, I mean, white's kingside pawn structure is like somewhat brittle, and like there's like a target. Like at some point, black will play maybe g5 and try to break this open, and So okay, so bishop f6, Nepo plays. So now it's no longer safe to snatch this because then simply bishop takes c3, and then the bishop would just be hanging on e4. So white is not able to safely take on e4. And so, okay, so queen c2, hitting this again. Nepo does take on e3, and then Ding plays d takes. It's interesting, I would have assumed that f takes would be desirable for white because it opens up the rook, and now there could be like rook takes f6 ideas, or maybe rook f4 ideas to hit e4 again, and all of this stuff. So I wonder why. I mean, okay, like and black can't like win back the pawn here because this is also hanging here, right?
Right.
So, um, so yeah, okay. Again, I'm a little bit surprised, why Ding chose d takes e3. I guess he is maybe winning this pawn no matter what, maybe? I'm not sure. Oh no, it looks like not, because after bishop f5, which is what Nepo plays, now this would not be safe, because if knight takes e4, we're going to distract his queen, and then
Right.
this will be hanging. So white can't take that safely. So instead Ding plays knight a4. So then takes, and so now this is safe. This is safe. White's pawn structure is still a bit sort of brittle, potentially a target.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so knight c7. Okay, so that stops b5, and the knight could come in here, here, or here. Then he just lifts his rook. I mean, black's play seems kind of natural to me, kind of
It does. It does.
natural attacking moves, Um, so rook
And
f to
is
d.
that because, I mean, is it because white is misplaying that? I mean, is that kind of how you're sort of sensing it, that you're like,
It seems to
he didn't take
me
the pawn, he didn't do it this way, it's the little things lining up and all of that.
maybe my natural instinct is that this position is already a bit more comfortable for black. I'm definitely not certain of the evaluation though. So it's not like I feel like this is clearly great for black or anything, but
Mm-hmm.
my just instinctual impression is that maybe, white is already a bit less comfortable here. So knight d5, Nepo
Okay,
plays.
so at this point, what do you see white's play ought to be? If you were white in this situation, what is it that you're looking to do? Are you giving up the attack on e4? Are you just sort of like, okay, my bishop is going to be entombed? Are you, are you what?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, part of the reason why I'm not sure of the evaluation here is that I'm not exactly sure what white should be doing here. Like if I saw something clear for white that looked like it just forced a bunch of trades and equalized or something, then it would be a lot clearer what the evaluation is. But the fact that I'm not even sure exactly what white should play means that I'm not exactly sure how everything's going to shake out here. I mean, it could be that white I mean, my feeling is that white would like to trade some pieces to sort of relieve the pressure against his king side and relieve, and lessen black's attacking chances. But I don't see a great way for white to, for example, force the trade of queens. The queens are very far from each other and they're not even remotely, I mean, they're not in contact. So
No.
so I'm not sure. I mean, I don't see any clear trades on the horizon here. The only way that white could try to start trading pieces at the moment would be to play f3, which doesn't work because then the queen is hanging.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, okay, so he played rook d4, putting more pressure on this, but then Nepo just ignored it. So like again, white has a chance to take on e4, but he doesn't do it. Now I'm not sure why that is. He plays queen d2. But again, why is he not taking this? Am I missing something? Takes. Oh, I guess after takes, black would then have queen takes e2. So he doesn't actually win a pawn because then black wins the pawn back. But I wonder, I mean, this looks safer for white than the position he had
Yeah.
before. I kind of feel like, I mean, unless I'm missing something, it feels like these trades. I mean, black also has knight c3 to take like this, but that doesn't seem to do anything either. So unless I'm missing something, it sort of seems to me like maybe bishop takes e4 might have been a better try. I'm not sure. Oh, okay, hold on. Another thing that we have to consider is this with a pin, or maybe even knight f6 with a pin. But this seems to defend everything. So,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe if queen g6 first, but then f or knight d2. Maybe this is just not safe. Maybe this is just not safe for white to do this because black is going to actually like take back and win some more material. Like white may have to play f3, and then he might just be in big trouble. Like black is winning the exchange back, and meanwhile the whole king side is collapsing. So maybe that's why. Again, we'll confirm this with the computer when we do our second pass here in a second.
Yeah.
But so queen d2, Ding played. Nepo played rook a to e8, and then king h2. Okay, so king h2, I'm not sure. I mean, it seems that that makes, I don't see how that even makes white's kingside safer. I mean, now this pawn is pinned, and there's like a g5 idea potentially
Right.
coming here. So bishop g4, Nepo played, hitting this, but Ding just ignores it with knight a5. So leaving this hanging and counterattacking this. Nepo ignores both of those and plays rook f6. I mean, again, this is sort of fitting in with my overall sense that it's just easier for black to play here. All his pieces are active, they're all in the game, they're
Mm-hmm.
all
Mm-hmm.
attacking. White can even succeed in crashing through over here on the queen side, and it doesn't even matter if black crashes
No.
through on the king side. That ends in mate potentially. So
Right.
black can afford to just like jettison his entire queen side if he can just land the knockout punch on the king side. So king g1, g5, and that's
So I
basically
mean
that's
that,
basic.
and that doesn't just, I mean, just seem completely, you know, king h2, king g1. I mean,
Certainly, in
just
retrospect, it looks
a
like a big
loss
waste
of a
of time.
tempo.
Yeah, big
Yeah.
waste of time. So, I mean, this is basically exactly what happened. Ding did crash through on the queen side. Black did
Yep.
crash through on the king side, and that means that black is doing great because black's attack leads to mate. White's counterattack on the queen side is just leading to winning material.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so this is just hanging. But Ding has this move rook takes e4. So hitting this, but Nepo just goes for it anyway. So he sacks the exchange,
Yep.
and then queen h1 mate is threatened. So here, giving the king an escape square. I guess if king here, I think we have this mate.
Hmm.
Okay, so that's
That's
what would
pretty
happen
clean.
if he took. So he has got to give his king an escape square, but then he just loses to rook, and now black is just up a piece. And then Ding has this nice final tactic. Uh, if takes, then here, and then maybe here. What's the right move here?
Isn't it rook? I mean,
If rook, then here, and then the king is escaping this way, right? Or no? Am I missing something? I would think that maybe this,
pawn.
and then just like this, threatening various unstoppable checkmates. I think this is just over. So,
Yeah.
um, all right. So, bottom line, like my human impression is that this was like a fairly smooth attacking win by Nepo against Ding in this
Mm-hmm.
game. That Black got a promising attacking position early on and just drove the stake home. And so let's go back and
And when you
let's.
say that, a fairly, you're saying that he specifically pushed his pawn, into the white territory, and that became the crux of the whole, fight. And white was not able, to, to take out the pawn. I mean, it remained there to the very end, doesn't it?
No, White did take it at the end, but like I don't even mean as specific as that. I mean, the pawn was just one part of the overall attack that Black got. I just mean that broadly speaking, Black got a big attack. White failed to generate enough counterplay. White failed to repel the attack. The
Mm-hmm.
attack crashed through. Black won. That's my just sort of simple summary of what
Mm-hmm.
happened. So let's turn on Stockfish. Now we're looking at Stockfish here in the browser. And so let's just I'm just going to go through fairly briskly with the computer and see if the computer um, sort of disputes any of my assumptions about this
Can
game.
you reshare it so that I'm not seeing
Oh yeah,
the
hold on a second.
evaluation?
Let me change it so that you can see it. Um,
Not that I need it, but
okay, can you see it now?
yes, I can.
Okay, you can see the evaluation and everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so first of all, we're not going to pay attention to like the negligible evaluation changes of like point 0.1, at a time. We're looking for any big shifts or any big trends that are going on here. So this is
No, I'm kind of
still
hanging on the point. I am.
penny wise. That's
Right
what you
now,
are, Mark.
white has the advantage is crushing
I want
black
to
on their heels.
I want to speak
Oh,
about that for a second because this is something that I've been thinking about a lot recently. I always think a lot about this, but even more recently that like, an evaluation that says like plus point 0.3, that just means that it's a draw. I mean, the game is still like unwinnable by force from either side. And even something much greater than that, even something up to like +1 is probably still within the drawing margin. Like it's not actually winnable by force for white if it's +1. Like there are only three possible evaluations of a chess position in a higher sense: winning for white, winning for black, or neither, which the only other option is that it's still a draw. So,
well,
only,
you're kind of brushing over unclear at that point. I mean,
but
there
that's
that
why I said in a higher sense, in a sense of like, if one could play perfectly from that point on, whether perfect play would be enough to win, or whether it would be enough to win for the other side, or barring either of those, then it would just be still drawable for the side that is like worse, that is down material or whatever. So basically, my attitude towards going over it with the computer is to like try to use the computer's evaluation just as sort of an estimation of like whether or not the position is winning. I mean, that's like the very first, most basic thing I want to see. It's like whether or not the position is winning. And if it's not winning, then exactly how good it is, how much of an advantage it is a little bit sort of not clearly defined, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so like already we're seeing like a little bit of a trend upward in White's favor, right? Position is like getting closer. The value Stockfish's evaluation is getting a little bit closer to like 0.5, right? And
well,
so
I think that Stockfish is kind of wanting White to take the pawn. I mean, he
right.
certainly.
Okay, right. Well, I forgot to actually verify my assumptions here. So bishop takes e4. Stockfish does consider this to
Mhm.
be like maybe White's best move. And then it's saying that like I guess if queen to h5, yeah, I mean basically this is it fails to find any like clear refutation for black of this idea. So it seems like maybe this was Ding's best option to take on e4. Okay, let's
Yeah.
keep going. So queen h5, and again here, just as we were wondering, knight takes, and then bishop takes. Again, so like what I was looking at bishop f6 here, right? But then it's saying just like queen c2, and we have a fairly similar position to the game, but like white is up a pawn. And so like let's say knight c3, I mean knight c7. Yeah, I mean it's saying that like basically black has compensation for the pawn here, but it's like not anything clear. White is not worse. I mean, what
Why can in that previous situation? Why is it that Black can't take the e2 pawn?
right, that's another option, but like after takes, first of all, this is on. So black needs to throw this in, but then this.
Mm,
And now the queen has to move, and then white can do something like desperado his bishop, like even just like this. And I think white wins a pawn. White is up a pawn here, right? Yeah, white is just up his h pawn. And so
right.
black now is still down a pawn and doesn't even have much of an attack here, he's not
Right.
even
Right.
so I mean, so again, like it seems like on this move or on the previous move, white should have, snatched
Taking
the
the
pawn.
pawn.
And the fact that he
Hmm.
didn't sort of maybe was part of why black got more of the elbow room that he did to like develop his attack. So queen c2 takes, and I was also wondering why not f takes, but the computer just doesn't think this is as good. Like here, and then after rook f4, black has bishop e5, right? And then this is hanging. And then actually white is only okay here if he like sacrifices the exchange, which is sort of an extreme decision. So that's like
Yeah.
why f takes is not, you know, the better option for white here. So d takes, and then bishop f5. So already now you can see from the evaluation that, I mean, a few moves ago it was like over half a pawn better for white, according to Stockfish. Now it's back to being like below half a pawn better for white,
Right.
like much less clear. And so it seems like sort of the moment passed at this point. The moment passed for Ding to, snatch the pawn and make
Yeah.
make Nepo prove it. And now it's like sort of being unclear. And so the next moment that we're going to be looking for here, Mark, is the moment where it actually starts getting worse for white, because it is not
Right.
yet worse for white, right? He sort of missed
Right.
his
Right.
chance to maybe get an advantage. And
Hmm. Hmm.
now it's unclear And maybe it's practically easier for black. That's my assumption. But objectively, we're looking for what objectively white does that's wrong, that actually gives him an objective disadvantage. So takes here. This all looks pretty normal. Knight d5. And this looks like the moment. I can already tell because look at Stockfish's top options, right? Like the move that Ding played, Rook d4, is the third best option according to Stockfish, and it's not very good. It's bad for white, right? I mean, it's already like 1.5 for black. And so the best move, the move that he should have played, this was like maybe his last moment to still have an okay position, was b5. And so b5 destabilizes the knight, and
Right.
so if black plays, let's say the move he played in the game h6, then white then already the margin of error for white is a lot wider. There's no
Mm-hmm.
forced move here for white. White has various options, and they're all, roughly speaking, okay for white. If he can take, or he can play rook a to c1, and then if g5, it's just not clear. Like, I don't know. I guess actually it's looking a little bit more dangerous. Actually, as we go deeper into this variation, it is looking possibly a little bit more dangerous for white. He may actually have to at some point make a tough decision here. Let's look a little bit deeper. So takes. So maybe rook h6 is coming, but Stockfish is now saying like takes. Aha, and now we do have a narrow margin. White has like an only move here, like knight d2,
Mm-hmm.
attacking e2, I mean e4 again. But I mean, still objectively, it looks like this is okay for white. Again, this is just according to Stockfish running in my browser here. So somewhere around here maybe was like the critical moment for white, where he had to play at least some good moves in order to not become worse. He didn't find those good moves, and he did become
Right.
worse.
Yeah.
But here Nepo maybe didn't play the best move, h6. I mean, according to the computer, g5 right
Well, the
away was.
computer always likes playing that, G5 and G6, it doesn't. It's sort of like, you know, you don't need to defend your king. Let's just toss up these pawns and see what will happen.
Mark, as we've
That,
talked about in our videos before, you are very gun shy about moving the pawns in front of your king. And so anytime Stockfish
that is correct.
suggests any sort of pawn move with the G and the H pawns when the king is castled over there, you're like, wow, who would ever think of this? But it's a little bit less crazy to me. But still, okay, so
Mm-hmm.
G5. So maybe this was better. So Nepo's not playing perfectly either. So H6. Now, apparently, this gives white another chance to still be okay, according to these
Right.
evaluations up here. But queen d2, and now we're back in like, -1 land. So again, b5 was an option. That might have
Mm-hmm.
been a much better try for white, or just developing rook a to d1, and then if g5, then sacrificing the exchange. Wow, this is a really interesting idea. Uh, and apparently, like, white has full compensation here, because if takes, knight d6, look at this craziness. And like maybe black already, it I mean, black's position is a little bit collapsing here. It's like really unclear what's going on here. Takes here, here. I don't know. There's a bunch of crazy stuff going on here.
Yeah.
So, okay, anyway, so this was another moment where Ding could have like sort of been fine, but only in a very complicated way. He could have been objectively fine in a complicated way. Instead, he played queen d2. Now we're back to being like -1, and let's see if there's any more chances for Ding. So rook a to e8, king h2 doesn't help. Things are sort of getting
No.
worse for white here. Bishop g4, and then knight a5 is making things even worse. So like instead of knight a5, I mean the computer wants to just go back to c2, but like it still thinks this is bad for white. It definitely wants to play b5 at some point. It looks like that's a move that just Ding never played that would have been a good option at many moments.
Right.
So okay, so knight a5, and then it looks like again g5 was even better than what Nepo played. Like this g5 would have been even stronger at multiple moments for Nepo. So
Mm-hmm.
instead he played rook f6. King g1 is the best move, sadly. Like as we said before, it wastes time for white, but it still may have been the best move. So then g5, and here was the final moment where white really, really needed to play b5. He didn't play it. If he had played it, takes. Everything's like collapsing for both sides. Takes. And then, I mean, like white's king is okay for now. The fact that he's got his bishop still on g2, like sort of holding things together, you
Yeah.
know. Like maybe that's the key. And black is still better, but it's not like immediately decisive. Like the evaluation is only like -1. So it's still just
Yeah.
like maybe clear advantage for black, not necessarily winning. So again, this B5 idea, he needed to like work harder to destabilize black's queen side and also black's center, because
Hmm.
when C6 falls, that means D5 is hanging. So that's maybe
Right.
part of why B5 would have been more effective because it also, indirectly influences the center. So after knight takes B7, that is a big mistake. Now Ding is busted.
Wow.
Now it's pretty much completely decisive, and
Yeah.
and Nepo's crashing through, and like this is still stable here on D5, and it's just too late. It's too late for any of the counterplay, and at this point, objectively speaking, it's just over. Black is just winning. The rest of it is clear. The rest of it is clear. Okay, so overall, like our conclusions from this game, I would say, is that it was, as you pointed out, both sides came to the game, with like in a fighting spirit. The game
Yes.
became unbalanced early on, which like kudos to both players for going for it. I mean, kudos especially to Nepo because he was playing black. He wasn't like groveling for a draw. He was like fighting even with the black pieces. Certainly paid off in this game. And then the objectively speaking, the point at which things became maybe unclear was when like white missed these couple of opportunities to win the pawn on e4. That
Hmm.
was
Hmm.
maybe from a objective perspective white's best option, and then black would have had to sort of prove the compensation, and he maybe would not have had full compensation. But when Ding never did that, Nepo kind of was able to build up his position without much risk because he's not
Yes.
down a pawn. And then the point at which, Ding fully lost control and actually became worse was like somewhere around here, around move 20, where like he missed a chance to play b5 here.
Hmm.
Then like later on the next move, he missed a chance to play b5. And meanwhile, Nepo's missing his own chances to play g5, but
Right.
at a certain point, Ding like misses his last chance to play b5, and
Hmm.
then the attack just becomes like too overwhelming. And so
Right.
that's like the basic objective summary of this game. So any other observations or like large scale thoughts you have about this game, Mark?
Not large scale thoughts and all that, but I'm getting ready to play a match today, and I'm playing in my Sicilian. And so, in my preparation, especially for like the Smith Moore, that sort of thing, you're always playing sort of that the D7 move and all that in order to destabilize that pawn that is kind of pushed down into your territory. And so, I'm looking at that from, just as you said, looking at sort of from this reverse Sicilian there.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, it does really feel as though the pawn was, as you put it, it was the advantage as opposed to being the disadvantage, as
You're
opposed to
talking about
being the,
black's pawn here on e4 you're talking about, right?
yep.
Right, right.
I
So
mean, even
you're
if you play back like a couple of moves there and all that, because he plays, you know, as opposed to playing like a,
Oh, right. I
obviously
see what you mean.
there's some issue going on here, but I think that in the,
So you're
in the
saying that
reverse
like
of it,
you're saying that like going into your game later today, your league game where you'll be playing the Sicilian, you'll be much
mm-hmm,
more likely, like even having seen this game, like if they play some sort of some sort of like line where their pawn gets to e5, you'll be much more likely to try to trade it off early because you'll be worried.
immediately,
You'll be worried that it could
immediately.
become a strength like it was in this game, right? So
Yeah,
that's sort of your
absolutely,
takeaway.
absolutely.
Yeah, that makes
And it
sense.
becomes it's sort of it's an easy target to hit at,
Right,
as you sort
right.
of said,
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I agree. I see it that way too. So, well, anyway, so I mean, this is in retrospect, this game was kind of really a a teaser for what we might see in a Ding Nepo World Championship match. I mean, I'm hoping that they come to this match both just like out for blood from the first game and they remain so throughout the match. I mean, it could be a more interesting match than any of Magnus Carlsen's matches so far. This is the thing that people don't appreciate enough is that, you know, the World Championship games don't have to be perfect, like
that is correct.
there's not necessarily, you know, overlapping interests between the spectators and like the sort of scientific observers of like how accurate the games are. The spectators want to see blood, even if that means mistakes. You can't win a chess game unless there's some mistakes. So if you're looking for perfection, then you're going to get all draws like we've had in
Yes.
some of Magnus Carlsen's matches. And so it's like, what do you want? Do you want an exciting match or do you want a perfect match? And for me, I would rather see an exciting match between these two players than necessarily prefer another perfect Magnus Carlsen, versus Caruana match. And I was rooting for Caruana in the candidates. He
Oh,
was my
absolutely.
top choice to win the candidates, but I um even though Nepo and Ding were not like my top picks, you can't say that they don't play interesting chess. And so just for that, I'll be looking forward to the match. So, yeah. Well, thanks to everybody for watching our video on this Ding versus Nepo round one game from the
Yeah.
FIDE Candidates tournament. And we will definitely all be looking forward to this World Championship match between these two players coming up. And I hope that you all stay tuned for Mark's and my next video here on my Alex King YouTube channel, whenever that is. We'll try not to keep you
Hmm.
waiting for several weeks again. But thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you soon. Take
All
care,
right.
Mark.
You too.